What's up, everybody, and welcome to tutorial number 5 for C programming language. I do hope you guys have been enjoying the previous videos, and now we're gonna start progressing into exploring the concepts that we have been exploring when we were setting up the environment before we started coding. As I mentioned, it will be covered in future tutorials, right? This is the beginning of explanation of those concepts. So cool. So we're gonna start by exploring the methods, right? I know we have libraries that we get to import in our code, which allows us to access certain methods. We will get to the libraries as we progress on. So right now what I'm explaining is the method, right? The methods. So the first thing that you wanna ask, or the first thing that you wanna know is, what is a method, right? What is a method? Cool. So a method is a block of code that gets executed only when called. So basically what you do here is you create a block of code, and then that code has a specific purpose, right? Whenever you need to accomplish that purpose, instead of you recoding the whole thing, you just call that function and it will perform the action that you need. You will explore this, or you will fully understand this when we get to code itself, but most of you will realize that we have been dealing with methods ever since we started the tutorials, and you will see the method that we have been dealing with. So let's just quickly check how you define that method, right? So let's check the syntax. The syntax goes like this, right? So the first thing that you want to do is you want to specify the data type of the return value. So you define a function. This function must return something. If it doesn't return something, it falls under a certain category, and I will discuss that in the next slides, right? In this slide, I'm talking about a function that has a return type. So basically, it doesn't really matter whether it has a return type or not. You specify the type of the function that you want to define, right? So you declare a data type. Data types, you will know this talk of from the very first tutorial video that we had. So if you didn't fully master that, I suggest that you go back, because what's happening, or if you've been checking the whole tutorial, we have been combining, getting new concepts and then combining them with the previous concepts, right? Then we have statements, right? So these are the block of code where it can either be having control flow statements, conditional statements, and so on and so on, right? Then you have a return value. Now this is the value. So what value, or what data type of this value should we return? Is the data type that you declared when you were defining your function. And then you have a closing calibrate. So you've seen this format before, int main, right? Exactly. Then we said what we can have a return 0 or not based on our first discussion. So basically, you know what a method is before, just that you didn't really know it in this kind of way, but now you're starting to get to know the method, right? Cool. So now what I want to cover is the method types, right? So the first type is a method without a return value. I know the syntax is that you first declare a type and then the name of your function, right? And then you must return the value of that type. But then what if you want to just define a method that displays something without returning anything? That method is a method that doesn't have a return value. So this is void method, and I will explore this, or I will fully explain this when we get to the coding side. Method via a value, method with a return value, right? So we have a method that gets to return a value, right? So this one can return either a string, can return an integer, it can return a char, right? That's another method, right? Cool. So We're going to explore methods as we go to the coding side, and hope you guys are going to be able to understand. And if you're not able to follow through, please do take your time so that you understand the concept. Because the moment you understand the concept and the moment you start learning part by part, don't rush, don't try to do a lot of things at the same time, because it would not do you good to try to do many things all at once and only to find that you didn't even understand or accomplish anything at all. Cool. Let's head over to our terminal and start coding. Here we go. mkdir c tutorial 5, right? There we go. cdc tutorial number 5. There we go. And then it's vim. We are talking about methods. Let's just call our function method.c, right? Cool. So remember, when we start coding, right, we first set up, and upon the setting up, now you will be understanding part of the setting up syntax, right? So we have hash include. So this is the part that we'll cover in the future tutorials. And then we have this. Does that ring a bell? Yes, it does. Why? That's your data type, is an int, and that's a main. And then you have your codes there, right? So this is the method that you always have all the time. So what I want to do now is I want to start creating a method. So we discussed that we have two types, right? One that has a return value and one that doesn't have a return value. So we have a method with the return value, right? And then we have a method without a return value, right? Cool. So let's define that method without a return value. As I mentioned, it's a void method. So the first things first, right? You have to define the type. So the type in this case is just going to be the keyword void and then the name. So let's just say display, open and close parentheses, right? And then we have curly brackets. One other thing that I want to specify is that now we are not having any parameter at all, right? So this is the method that doesn't have any parameter at all, right? And we'll discuss about that just in a moment. And then the print function, printf, this is print Murex the coda, and then we end line, and then we're that, right? Cool. This is you've defined your method, right? Now you have to call that method in the main, because the definition says that this is a block of code that gets called, that gets executed only when called, right? So I have to call that. So I call the function name, and then I close and open parentheses and call this, right? But cool. Looking at this should be working, this should be fine, but it's not gonna work. Reason being that now your compiler, when it compiles, it starts reading code from the beginning to the top. So it starts there. Oh, you're gonna use this library, so you're gonna have access to certain methods, right, and certain functions. Oh, methods and functions are the same thing. Then you have a main method. Okay, cool. And then display. Okay, this function is not part of the library you loaded, so I don't know where this function is. So your compiler gets confused there. So in order for this to work, you define that method before your main method, or alternatively you can prototype this function. What do I mean by that? So basically you declare the function and the name, right, in the type that it's gonna have, and omit the body. Let me show you what I mean. So this is void, this is display, and that's that. So that's what we call function prototyping. What you just did, you made the compiler aware that I'm gonna have this method. This is the method. When this calls the method, okay, it's gonna call the body or the code, the block, right? So it's gonna call this method. And then it executes whatever block code it has there. So now if you try to execute this, we use our G++ compiler methods. Let's name this Morex, and then we execute, and then we see Morex, the coder is working. Alternatively, what you could have done, you could have just moved this method, and instead of prototyping it, you define your method there and the body, and then it should work. But then mostly you want your main method to be always at the top, right? So that it's easy for you to keep track of your code. But that depends on how you want to do things. You can apply prototyping, or you can just define your method at the beginning, right? Cool. Now let's define a method with a return value, right? So let's make this one a char. So you know about the different data types. I'm not going to discuss much about that. Then I am going to say letter. Cool. Now so far we have discussed of a method that doesn't have any parameter, but right now what I want to have a parameter there, right? So since we're dealing with the char, let's just have char ch, right? That's the character. And then what I do, I just return I'll return a string saying letter, and then I add ch, right? Hopefully this is gonna work. If it doesn't, then we'll have to play around with that. Cool. So once you're done, you're gonna go to your main method, and then you call letter, right? So if the function has a parameter, you have to pass an argument. Now pay attention to the words, right? Parameter, argument. A lot of people confuse this. So a parameter is in your function definition. An argument is when you're calling, so when you call your function, you pass an argument, right? If they give you a function and they give you a multiple choice question and says that what's the name of the argument you're passing to a function, you know that based on the code, because you know where they are calling and the name of the variable they are passing as an argument, right? And then in this case we just want to pass in a, right? Look at me busy messing up my syntax. Let's go. There we go. So we execute and we have that, right? So I have to convert to a char in order for me to do that. So what I can just do there is I can just do this actually, just to avoid too much. Just say, and then I say 1, I guess. Let's hope this is valid. Oh, it is not valid. Letter was not declared. Wait, we did. Oh, okay. Let's return what we had first. Okay, so I mentioned prototyping, right? And that's exactly what I did right now. I declared my function after it's been called, and the compiler is confused as to who is a letter, right? Before, it was complaining about that, so that part was sorted because we were trying to add a string with the char, and we cannot do that, right? And then that got fixed. We fixed that part, right? And then the second part right now is that now letter, your computer is confused because it doesn't know what letter is, right? So we had to prototype. So that's char letter, and then you have char ch. Cool. Once you do that, then your compiler should be happy with you, and then you can execute that, right? But then you will see that nothing is being printed because I'm not printing my return value. To do that, I can simply just come here and I do this print f, and then I have that, then I have that. So if I execute this, let me just quickly simulate my button. There we go. Now we get to be reminded of something else. What is it again? A char. So you have to have a specifier, right? So it's percentage C. You can also end line after that, and then there you go. And then your compiler should be happy. Let's clear terminal, and there we go. Your compiler should be happy. Why is it R? So that's a char. It returns a char. Let's just return a char and not add one, and there we go. We have ourselves a char, right? You'll see that this comes after because of how we formatted the whole thing there, but the main purpose wasn't really focusing more on the format, but defining a method and getting that value. Now this covers everything with the parameters, arguments, and the ones without arguments and different types, right? So go and explore in terms of the concepts, and like I've said before, don't be afraid to get errors. It's part of the process. If you're trying to be someone that's always perfect, you will never learn. You learn through trial and error, exploring, right? So knowing that you can either use prototyping, so you can use prototyping, right, to make your compiler know that later in my code I am going to have a function called this. For now, I'm just making you aware that if you encounter a function call of the method that I haven't created yet, just know that I am going to be there. So when it calls there, it knows that, oh, so there's going to be that method. So basically when it gets here, it goes to the method, right? It goes to the method, execute that, then comes there, and then it checks that, right? So understanding how your compiler reads your code is one of the things you want to know as well, or you want to fully understand, because it makes your coding life simple and allows you to be effective when it comes to coding. I do hope this wasn't really overwhelming, especially with the second part where there are no where there were lots of errors. But I was trying to show that you see, even though I know, you see, the thing is, I remember the format specifier, all that, but I forgot. Right? We're all human beings, right? We forget sometimes. So forgetting while knowing is way much better than forgetting while not knowing anything, because you are going to be stuck for that error for eternity, because you wouldn't know exactly what wrong. So quickly when you read the error, you know, I'm forgetting something. So yeah, that's basically our tutorial, and I do hope you guys did enjoy, and I shall see you guys next week Tuesday.